Okay, so assume we're going to discuss the meaning of a path in terms of the Holy Ari and the Tanya's writing with regard to where we are and what this means. Perfect evil, imperfect evil, intermediate, imperfect righteous, and perfect righteous. This is a part in the Tanya where the Tanya speak about the various, the five level of the soul of an individual. An individual can be completely wicked, but he's totally wicked, but all his behavior and soul is totally wicked. Imperfect evil is where is evil, but is evil is not under the submission of the good part of his soul. The intermediate is the benoni, the one that is. We will discuss those, but the one that is not really average, but that's the one that is always in conflict between his good and his bad. The imperfect righteous is a righteous that is righteous, the ralo, is a righteous, but he has a bad part in it that is governing his good part. And the perfect righteous, that's the one that his good part is governing all of his behavior. In the introduction of test, we have it again in regard to the double concealment, single concealment, correction, first revelation, and second revelation. The second part, I will let certainly someone else that is more knowledgeable with tests to explain it. On the first part, the Tanya, it's very difficult to try to comprehend what the Tanya is telling us. It's really at the beginning of the first chapter of Tanya when he brings that when the soul comes down to this world, he has to swear that it will be a righteous and not wicked. So there is a big argument about what do you mean that the soul that is already a righteous thing has to swear itself that it will be righteous. But if we have the animal soul, then we can understand. The idea is when we swear, when we make an oath in that condition, it gives strength. Since the soul was ready to come down to this world, she had to make that oath to get the strength to indeed combat its animal soul and be able to conquer it and be righteous. And it said you should look at yourself as a wicked. Tanya, when it continue after that, it said you should not think yourself as righteous, but you should look yourself as wicked. But this is a controversial with what the Pirkei Avot said. But you should not look at yourself as wicked, because if not, you're going to be depressed and sad. And this speak onto two levels. The outside level, in the outside, I can be wicked, I can do wicked things, but this is not what it speak about. It speak about the inner thing. I have to recognize myself that I have the wicked potential, the animal soul that is wicked. And in my outside, I have to be righteous. Because there is the story of, in that concept, the story of Rabbi Abba, which is one of the great in Talmud, one of the greatest scholar in Talmud. And he was asked, are you righteous? And he said, no, I am a benoni. And he was always doing good. There is a story about Rabbi Abba that when the angel of death was coming to try to take him away, he was not able to take him away because he was always occupied in Torah. So the angel of death had to create a disturbance. So the angel of death was not able to take him because he was like so busy. So he had to destroy him to be able to take him. Because when we say so because when you occupy in Torah, or in the mitzvot, you are protected. So that's what they were saying. So they were saying, how can you call yourself a benoni? If you are a benoni, then no one can reach it. No one can become at that level. So it is to show that indeed, Rabbi Abba said that within myself, I had the struggle. I have to combat my evil inclination and I have to conquer it, but I do not act upon it, which tells us that each one of us, we can reach that level of a benoni of the intermediate. So now that we understand how does that relate to, but it not relate only into the behavior of the outside, but it relates to the inside. So the perfect evil is the one that is inside himself, he let all his evil inclination conquer his good inclination. And he act upon us. He's really behaving and he's inside always letting his evil inclination conquer it. And he's expressing it. The imperfect evil is the one that inside himself he has more and a lot of those evil inclinations. And sometimes he behaves as such, but sometimes he let his godly level to be able to take over and be able to still do good things. And the same with the imperfect righteous. The imperfect righteous is the one that has still sometimes tendencies to do the wrong thing, and the perfect one does not have nothing to deal with. All is inner is totally doing only for the right thing. It does not think twice. It doesn't have inside him a battle between his animal soul. His godly soul totally conquered his animal soul. So, but because we will think that, okay, there is two, right? When we said into the Yom Kippur, that we open two books, the book of the life and the book of the death. If you are righteous, you are in the book of life. That means that you had all your deeds, or good deeds are greater than the bad deed. Okay, that all you did are greater than your bad deed. Your good deed are greater than your bad deed. The rasha will be the evil, is that all your bad deed will be greater than your good deed. And the benoni will be that you're in the middle. You have 50-50. And that's not what the Tanya speak about at all, because if not, you will have only 3 levels and not 5. So that's why they're referring really to the inner level of our own soul. Because the animal soul, contrary to what a lot of people think, is not a bad thing. It is really like sometimes I hear even with Bibi, but it is considered like the bad. It's not something that is bad at all. My ego is not bad. It is what permit me. It want to elevate itself. That's what I have to do. I have that capability to, with a good soul, to elevate my animalistic soul and to get it to the level of being a righteous. And that's why when we said before at the beginning of the Tanya that it was swear, that the soul was swear, I will be a righteous and not be a wicked. But this is what we try all to do. But most of us, and this to become a righteous is almost extremely difficult. There is a story that the Baal Tanya, the Alter Rabbi Sneur Zalman, wrote first, before he wrote the book of the Tanya, of the Benoni, he wrote a book of the righteous. And he gave it to one of the great tzaddik to be able to read, and the tzaddik read it and loved it and said it is beautiful. And he told him, but why did you write it? If you want to share it with others, there's nothing to do. A righteous doesn't have nothing to do. So the Benoni is the one that have to deal with all those things. But we have to be able to conquer our soul. There's another possibility also as a commentary of a thing that this book of the righteous was also written by Rabbi Narman of Breslev. So there's other possibility that also another book like this was also written. Because there's a story that was said that when he read his book and he told him, you should burn it. You should burn the book of the righteous because no one be able to use it. And of course, the Alter Rabbi didn't want to. But one time in his house, a fire came and the book got burned. And the same day that he burned, that tzaddik also passed away because he was saying you should burn it, and the ashes of my soul should be able. My soul will go in the same time to heaven with the ashes of a book that you will burn. And the same day that his house burned and the book burned, this righteous tzaddik passed also away. So we understand now really what are those 5 levels. But the perfect evil is all animal soul, completely governed is godly soul. The perfect righteous is godly soul, totally governed is animalistic soul. Imperfect evil is godly soul and his animal soul are in fight, but his godly soul is a little stronger than his animal soul. The perfect righteous is the same concept. And the intermediate is the one that is always in a battle, in a struggle between his animal soul and his godly soul. And only when we react in life, that's the way we act. And I don't know, Ayala, do you want to add something?
I don't think so. Not that was great.
Maybe anyone else want to add something?
Georgie's asking, is the benoni the correct state?
What do you mean? Come on, correct. There's not correct state, but that's where we are found, most of us. We found that we always have to struggle within ourselves. We struggle before I do. Come on, like what I'm saying, the righteous. Let's say if I always do good. I never think about it. Not the thought of doing a bad thing does not exist in me. Then, in a sense, if it does not exist, there is no really reward of doing good. It's like breathing. I do not think twice. It's not, oh, should I breathe? Should I not breathe? I'm breathing automatically. It's an automatic situation. The benoni is struggle to be able to do godly thing. His nature is really not to do it, but he conquer it. Instead of letting his impulse, his evil inclination do, he conquer it and he do the right thing. There is something, by the way, since I thought we wanted also to talk about the parasha of this week, Mishpatim. There is a sentence in the parasha of Mishpatim that said, if you see the donkey of your enemy, of the one you hate, struggle onto his lawn, it said, should I not go and help him, you will, and you will help him. So the question is this, well, what does that mean? That I have to go and help my enemy, and you don't have only to help him once, you have to help him and help him. And there is a question also with Rashi that said, if your friend and your enemy both are in the same predicament, they're both struggling, their donkey is struggling, you go first to the one you hate and not to your friend. You do not go first to help your friend, you go first to help, because you want to turn its evil inclination. You want to subdue his evil inclination. And that's what they're telling me here. I have to subdue my evil inclination to do good. So that's what the benoni is all about. The benoni is almost doing like a righteous person because he only do good thing. But inside himself, he has the total difficulty, the total struggle to conquer it. There was another question I thought, no?
Can I actually add one thing?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
So just also to Georgie's question, like the book is obviously written in a way that that sort of builds each description to then say, our goal is to be a benoni. In other words, we don't. His point is like we don't need to get discouraged if we still have if we still have sort of this constant struggle within us. He's sort of saying like the struggle is the ideal state to be. Like if we can get to a level where we have this struggle within us, but our thoughts and speech and actions are completely clean of that evil inclination, of that animalistic inclination, then we have really achieved we are doing the work. He's sort of saying like, don't even think about the area in which like your whole inner world is this quiet stream where it's all good. If you're at the point where it's a constant struggle, but you're at the level where thought, speech, and action is clean, then that is like phenomenal. But I also wanted to say that Chabad is sort of like a progression, and this text was the original text of Chabad, and then there's 7 Rebbes after this author who sort of commented on it and developed it. And the last Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who was sort of speaking on like on a different level, saying that like this is the time of Mashiach, this is like the end times. He suggested that actually in our times, we are able to do the work of the tzaddik. and that the idea in his movement is that he is the Rebbe, he is the complete tzaddik, and his followers are called emissaries, right? You have these Chabad emissaries who go around the world and start like places where they help people do mitzvot, and they're considered emissaries, like messengers. And there's a law in halacha that the emissary of someone is actually the person themselves. That like if I say, Philippe, can you go and give this money for me to someone who needs it, then it's actually like I've earned that action. Like Philippe becomes me, or like the messenger and the person who sent them is actually the same person. So he used this as a way of saying that his emissaries, the Rebbe's emissaries, were actually connected to this level of tzaddik, were connected to this level of complete tzaddik. So, so there's kind of two things going on in this book. On the one level, we need to make sure that we understand the intermediate tzaddik, the intermediate level, where if we're at the point where we have this struggle going on, then we've got it. Then that's really what this book is written for. At the same time, when we hear things about the complete tzaddik and we feel like, oh wow, like that's this state that I sort of like dream about or that I'm yearning for, that's also true, because there's something about our times that this level of complete tzaddik is actually accessible to everyone. And that's kind of the difference between identifying evil, subduing evil, and then transmuting evil. So the work of the tzaddik is more about transmuting, because they want their whole inner world to become as clean as their thought, speech, and action. But obviously we can't get to that work of making our inner world this complete, like, harmonious landscape before we're at the point where our words and our actions and our thoughts, even, I mean, think about that, even our thoughts is considered a level that the intermediate has to perfect. So I think both of those things are going on. So I don't want to like confuse people, but it's just like the struggle is the goal, and the complete transmutation and transformation is the goal. And those are both ways of understanding this work.
Yeah, because that's exactly what the Tanya is all about. The first sentence that is brought into the Tanya is Ki karov alecha, because this thing is close to you, to your heart to do, is not far away. So the Talmud bring that it said, is it in heaven for me to do? Is it across the sea for me to do? No, it is right in front of you, close to you to do. And like you say, it is within me. Because they said, even if I was a righteous, then I can live at such a level of spirituality where the word is it in heavens for me to do. So even if I'm a righteous, I'm still able to do that work, to get close to God, to get close to the Creator, to have that vekut, as we speak about. And across the sea, it's the representation that if something is above into my knowledge of Torah, the sea of Torah, it is called, that the depth that there is into all the knowledge and everything. But do I have to know all these things to be able to get close? No, if I know, yeah, I can also do it through that I can also advocate for all the knowledge that I will acquire into the Torah study, into the Talmud, the Mishnayot, all the books. But it is not necessary. It is karov elai, which means it is near my mouth and my heart to do. And like Ayala said, it is at those three levels, of a level of thought, speech, and action. I have to conquer my animalistic soul, my evil inclination. And that's why it's called an evil inclination, by the way. When we think, how come they didn't swear the animal soul to become a righteous? Because it is not a soul per se. It's an inclination within me. I have an inclination to do certain things. It's not a new entity, like there is something else, but there is a different entity within me. There's like a Satan within me, and there is a God within me, and there is two particles that are battling. It's not that. It's I'm battling my inclination to do certain things. I have a possibility to elevate it. And that's what really the whole process, the whole work is about, to be becoming like a righteous, like Ayala said. But the righteous totally conquer. The Tanya tell me to state But it is like those two parts, the evil inclination and the Yetzer Tov, the good inclination, are battling to conquer the city, which is my body, which is my being. They are battling inside to conquer, to become the one that will govern it. But because by themselves they cannot express themselves. I need to be able to have a body, the garment, to be able to express. I need to be able to think. By itself, it does not think. I need to be able to talk, because by itself, it does not talk. I need to be able to do, because by itself, it does not do. So I am the vehicle for the soul expression. So when I do things that are negative, or like sins, or things that are wrong, that are more into this world, then I am expressing my evil inclination. And when I am doing things that are for the Leshem Shamaim, for the sake of heaven, then I am doing my godly inclination, my good inclination.
Once we have corrected the thoughts, emotions, and action in the intermediate, what is the next higher and more perfect state? Okay, so just to clarify, there's action, which is the lowest, and that's the first thing that needs to be perfected. And then there's speech, which is the next, and then thought. And then after speech, after action, speech, and thought, which are called garments. These are like the garments of our soul. What we do, what we say, what we think, these are what our soul is enclothed in. And once we've perfected these garments, then we can go to perfect the actual being. And that state has to do with our actual, it's sort of like our personality traits. Like what we say and what we do is an expression of our personality. But it could be that someone has a stormy personality, a personality full of a lot of ego, a lot of different things, but they're at a level where at least they're not expressing that in reality. You know, at least they know how to put the brakes on. And the point of the Tanya is to say that is a very high level. That is what we're shooting for. That's the level that the sages in the Tanya said, I am at this level. But having said that, like I said before, the higher levels are open as well in this time. So once someone has reached that level where they have sort of like where they're holding the reins on the horse of their personality, then they can go into actually perfecting the horse. And how does that happen? It has something to do with having the inner world sort of, there's the level of identifying something as bad, and then there's a level of seeing that thing that we're identifying as bad and finding its root in good. So sort of we hear that the tzaddik has this soul that includes all souls. So how can it be that a tzaddik has a soul that includes all souls? It means that the negative characteristic traits in his community are paralleled in his soul through their higher aspect. So let's say that someone in his community has a lot of pride, then the tzaddik has within him pride in an elevated state. What is pride in an elevated state? Maybe honor, maybe a holy sense of honor. Or let's say with anger, if someone in his community has anger, then the tzaddik has like righteous anger, like knows when to really like put their foot down. So the process of perfecting personality is a little bit more gets into this realm more of transmuting, because the way to transform thought, speech, and action is by really holding the reins and not letting it get out. But once you want to change the actual basis of it, then the way that the tzaddik does this is actually through sort of finding the higher root of their character traits. So it's really this mix of, on the one hand, not letting the evil stuff get out, and on the other hand, even seeing the source of that evil in the personality, actually sort of like shining the higher light on it, because the tzaddik knows that nothing in them is actually is actually really evil, because the tzaddik is connected to this level where they know that everything in reality is good, and if it's bad, it's just a function of our perception of it. I'll just read this one thing. The tzaddik has a different perspective than the others. They know that everything bad is only the result of incorrect perception. So the work for them is to lift up the bad, to do the work that reveals that the bad has a divine root. The work of the tzaddik is the work of perception and transmutation, rather than identifying and distancing oneself from evil. And this is how the tzaddik becomes a charity for God, a merkava. It says that the complete tzaddik becomes a chariot for God in this world, because they're connected to that level where everything in this world, they've found the divine root. They've found the good root of it.
Yeah, really good, Ayala. 'Cause that's really the point, and in you helping to connect to the next part, what is in test, really, with that concept to be able to see all as good. Because that's the level when we speak about the double concealment. But I do not see, I see everything as bad into this world. I do not see that God is good, that does good. And that's indeed all those degrees to get to that degree, that I be able to see that there is indeed only one, nothing else besides him. And all that there is good, that there is no such thing as a bad thing. And that's what connects to all the rest of the second part in the concealment. The double concealment is I do not see, I see only struggle in my life. The first concealment, the single concealment, I see struggle, but I have moments where I can see with clarity that there is some good. So I differentiate between those both possibility, which is in a sense the Rasha that has imperfect evil, that is not totally, that he has some good within him. There is not all that is bad. So I can see that indeed sometimes I see that God has benevolence. I'm not really able yet to realize that it is all benevolent. I'm realizing that there is some part that seems to do. I enjoy some pleasure, but sometimes I enjoy pain, and I think that the pain is the bad thing. And when I enjoy the pleasure, I say, oh, God is good to me. Then that's the correction, when we have to do the correction, which is the benoni, that is the work, the one that does the work to indeed see that, to go above a reason, to see that even when there is the pain, is to be able to look within it and see that spark of light, to see the good within it. As Ayala was so poetically making clear, it is that level that I am seeking, to be able indeed to look at everything, to leave it into this world. And that's the correction we're doing. And the first revelation is to see that within what appear to be bad, there is good. I can see it now. I can find it. And therefore I rely upon the level, and I see that, okay, there is a God, and I love that God because I see that there is some good thing. And even when I see my suffering, I see that my suffering has a good purpose, and that's why I'm suffering, but it's okay. I understand that it is for the right thing. And the second revelation, which is what Ayala also was pointing out with the righteous, is indeed I do not see nothing bad no more. If it is pain, it is not that I don't see it as pain. I see it only as the benevolence of God. There is no possibility for me to see it otherwise. That's the only way that I'm seeing it. And Ayala, if you want to add to this, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe I'll just add that this debate sort of about bringing out the evil within, bringing out, definitely not bring out the bad, don't bring out the evil within good, bringing out the good within the evil, is, I mean, obviously it's really the deeper meaning of monotheism, right? Because if God is only one, then it means that everything that came out of God has to be good. So really this is like the ultimate teaching. And the way that this came up a lot in the early writings was around the idea of a bad thought coming into a person's mind during prayer. So like a person has finally set aside the time to pray, and then suddenly they start thinking about their bank account, or suddenly they start thinking lustful thoughts, or Suddenly they start worrying about things when they really should be in this state where they know that God is in control. And so some of the early Hasidic masters, like the Baal Shem Tov, taught that if that whatever thought comes down into you, the practice is to find the sephirah on the tree of life that corresponds to that thought. So, like I was saying before, with anger, connecting that to gevura, or a lustful thought, connecting that to chesed. And then sort of what happened is the later Hasidic writers came around and said, wait, this work is only for the tzaddikim. Like, we can't start telling the simple people to do this too, because there needs to be sort of, when they say simple people and tzaddikim, the real line is a person has to be at a level where they're not in the lustful thought. Sort of, I have a lustful thought. I need to have some level where I identify that as a negative thought, and I identify with the part of myself that wants to lift it up. So sort of that's the line between the tzaddik and the simple person. There needs to be some part of myself that's standing out of it and recognizing what it is and wanting to lift it up. So if I am identifying with that, then I can move on to this higher work. So Joni's saying, how do we find this on the tree of life? Well, Philippe, maybe we can read the part of the Tanya that talks about the 4 parts of the soul and the good and the bad qualities that come from each one, because that doesn't talk about the tree of life, but it does talk about these 4 categories of the soul. There's sort of the 4 elements: water, earth, air, fire, and then each of those areas has good and bad. And so once we identify which element the bad is coming from, we can also understand sort of what part of our soul is eager to get out. So, like, for example, lust comes from the aspect of water, but then water is also chesed. So there could be sort of like chesed in us that wants to flow. So I think actually that was in I think that was in chapter 1 that we read last time. So I don't know, we could read that over. So it's in the last paragraph of chapter 1. So it says, the explanation is to be found in the light of what Rabbi Chaim Vital wrote in Shar HaKdusha, that in every Jew, whether righteous or wicked, there are 2 souls. The neshamot which I have made, alluding to 2 souls. There is one soul which originates in the klipa and sitra achra, which is clothed in the blood of the human being, giving life to the body, as is written, for the life of the flesh is in the blood. From it stem all the evil characteristics deriving from the 4 evil elements which are contained in it. These are, so let's go through this one by one. Anger and pride, which emanate from the element of fire, the nature of which is to rise upwards. Now, I think actually in this alliteration of it, he doesn't go into the good qualities from each one. So maybe we can kind of like brainstorm for each one. If fire is the nature of which to go upwards, this is sort of like the flame in one's soul. So if one feels anger or pride, there's sort of a way of connecting to that like, what is behind this? There's fire behind this. There's this flame that's seeking to sort of rise and almost like nullify itself above. It might be expressed as pride below, but actually what it really wants is to be completely nullified above, to rise above and completely not be in this world. And this is kind of like if we were to see like our kid, if there's someone who you love more than anything in the world, and you see them being like, if you see your child being full of pride or something, usually we don't see that in a bad way. It's like we see that in an excusing way. So it's kind of like we put these eyes to see others and to see ourselves as what is the soul really wanting here. And this is really the deepest level, because then what we're doing is we're seeing this aspect of God, this fire aspect, which has come into this world. We're seeing it for what it really is. We're seeing it for the spark of goodness that is within it. And once we do that, once we see something in the world for the spark of goodness that's within it, it says that the evil actually just completely disappears and nullifies, because that's what it's there for. There's some berur, there's some separation of the good and evil that someone needs to do. And once someone does that, then the evil actually then the evil sort of completely dissolves.
I like that to add that because the fire, the opposite of the anger, and the Tanya bring it, that there is, what is that love of God? I first have the awe, the fear of God, then I have to reach to that firing love that I have, that is like a fire that burns my soul, that is that yearning of that love of God. So that is that opposite part with a fire. But you touched it on when you were
Right.
speaking about the love.
Right,
So.
right. Yeah, that's a great point. Right. Like the fire, exactly. The fire for God, the love of God. But I think also in that love of God, there's like a love that's so great that sort of like the flames of fire just want to sort of burn and consume to the point that I am completely nullified. So it's kind of ironic. It's like it's revealed as pride below, but actually what's really going on is this sort of pain in oneself that wants to be completely annihilated, which is a little bit intense. But that's the idea, is that whatever is that this world is a world of illusion. This world is a world of sheker, of lies. And so there may be something down here which comes across in a very sort of negative way, but the person who really who's really using the mind's eye will see it for what it truly is. Will see what's yearning to get out in a person, and that's really the highest level of affirming God's oneness is knowing that even when I'm seeing something that seems on the surface as completely as completely atrocious. And of course there's many levels of this, and I don't want to like get into so like who is Hitler, but as soon as I'm seeing something that strikes me as completely atrocious, if I can be at the level where I see what aspect of God has been sort of like corrupted through the way that things came down into this world, then I'm actually lifting that thing up, and I'm actually obliterating the evil.
And it's also the highest, the level of evil it is, like you just brought Hitler or people like this. In all reality, they had like that capability to be to such a highest level in holiness in the other side of the Sitra. And that's what there is a story of a rabbi that was near water. Then he saw rubber, very important rubber, swimming, and he told him, you're such a great thief, but if you would turn yourself and do for the good, you will become one of the greatest tzaddik that there is. And at that moment, that robber was like he thought, why not? Come on. He turned to it, and his body became so heavy that he was not even able to get out of the water because it took all his energy within it. It burned totally his own self, his whole physicality, this corporal action of the animal that was became so holy that he became so heavy into it. And it became one of the greatest tzaddik and a great scholar, because there is that potential. If I think, like I said, if I think that all like so-called defect of character that we have things that are wrong is just because I am not utilizing them for the right purpose. Let's say if my kid, I want to be loving and everything, right? And my kid is putting his hand onto the hot stove. That's okay. I love my kid. Let him do it. It is mean. It is the opposite. I have to be sometimes to have. I don't like the term anger so much because anger in English doesn't sound so right. But it's like I have to be able to be disciplinary, to yell at him, to say, no, don't do that. Come on, to be restraining him. And that part is that part that I have at time to use it for the right purpose. And this is where it becomes so important, is to understand that there is things that I have a capability to change. I have an evil inclination within me. I have to accept this. And that's what we were speaking at the beginning with the swearing of the soul. And I have to be able to get the strength to turn that animalistic tendencies to the good tendency, and I have to understand exactly how is it the difference. I have to get that wisdom to be able to understand the difference when it is animalistic and when it is really for lishma, when it is lo lishma and when it is for lishma. And this is, I know that when we speak about some people like Osama bin Laden, Hitler, and I even fought in the military. So, but we think our enemy of being so bad in reality because we're not able to see. We are blind. We're living into this world, into that corporality, and we're not able to elevate it. We're inside the klipa. And that's what's happening. We're seeing the klipa, we're seeing the shell, and not seeing the kedusha, the holiness that is within everything. And that's, I don't want to get into too much of this because that's where mostly we always have argument. But no, how can you say that the evil person, Hitler, but everything is according to God. So I'm not able to understand it, and that's why I have to accept it in such a way. You want to go, Ayala, with the second part?
Yeah, great. I just wanted to give one other example is like in the biblical story of Joseph, we learn that when he became king, when he became second to the king in Egypt, he was tested by giving Pharaoh's wife was sent to him to try and tempt him. And it says that what helped him from his sort of before I say that his passing this test of temptation was considered like the ultimate test, and that's why we call Yosef the tzaddik, and that's why Yosef represents the sephira of Yesod, which is connected to sort of like the root chakra and sexual energy. And it's sort of like he mastered this level. So how did he master that level? It says that that during the moment of the test, he saw his father's he saw his father's portrait in the distance. So why in the world would he see his father's portrait in this moment? Well, the idea is that his father, Yaakov, represents the Sephira of Tiferet, which is beauty. And so when he witnessed beauty in the world, what he did was he lifted it up and realized that beauty has a source. Beauty has a source, and God is the source, and oneness is the source. And so once he was able to realize that the beauty below was part of the totality, which is the beauty below and more than the beauty below and all of the beauty in the world and beauty in its most elevated and honorable and complete and holy form, then he sort of had no problem combating any temptation below. And so again, it's a little bit hard to speak about it in words because it's not exactly like he pushed it away. It's more like he included it in something much greater. And then once he was connected to the greater thing, then the parts of it didn't affect him anymore.
And to continue what we're saying, Yaakov was Ishtam Yosef Oalim, right? Yaakov didn't want to go to Egypt. He wanted to stay in the holiness. He wanted to stay in the spirituality. He didn't want to go. And Yosef is the opposite. He went down to Egypt and he kept that spirituality, like he used to say to his father. I didn't forget what you taught me. I didn't forget that spirituality. I was able to implement it into the level. And that's why he was one of the ministers in the power of Egypt to show us that it is here that we can elevate. It is really indeed Yaakov, and Yaakov is in between Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. Yaakov is the middle path, is the middle line, and Yosef really is what composed it in the level of this world, because it's really to be able to bring it, like you said, it's Yesod. It's Yesod was where man was created into this world, where Kedusha, where the holiness of God is put into the Klippa, into this world. And that's what Yosef represents, that capability for us to do it. Yeah, thanks, Ayala, if you want to keep on going.
Yeah, thank you. That was great. Okay, so we've done fire, which is anger and pride. Then we have the appetite for pleasure from the element of water, for water makes to grow all kinds of enjoyment. there's this idea, there's a verse in the Bible, I think, that says that all pleasures, all delights sort of grow or feed on water. This idea of something flowing, chesed, sort of. And so on the one hand, we have all of the pleasures of the world, and then I guess Philippe, definitely jump in here too, but I guess like chesed or love, giving pleasure, giving delight, rather than taking and wanting for the ego.
Yeah, water, mime, it's what we have really, shamayim, right? Event. There was a separation between the rikia that is above and the rikia and the part that is above and the part that is below in Bereshit. And it said the one part that was above, he called it Shamaim, heaven, and the lower part that was below, he called it Maim, because Maim is where that this world is about. It's water can be calm and can be ravagous. It brings those both aspects into that physicality, into the world. And this is what's going here with frivolity and scoffing and pleasure and all that is good to be. Life, life, water bring life, and that's what they bring here, that life into that corporality, into that the world that is below. And so in that sense, I can also elevate it. But everything has the capability to be elevated. That happiness, we worship God with joy. So we dance and we do all those things. There is a story when the Baal Shem Tov was teaching and everyone was happy, and people that went against him, that were opposing to him, so some of them was pretty bad against him. And one of his students said, how can you keep on doing this when so many people are speaking so bad about us, so bad about our teaching? And he took the example with the story of the dancing people. There's a deaf man that crossed in front of a wedding, and he see all people dancing and jumping around and doing all this, and he's telling me himself, they are crazy. Those people are crazy. Look at them. They're jumping around. And the Baal Shem Tov telling me that's what it is. The mitnagdim, the Eli that were opposing, were like deaf people. They see things, but they do not hear the voice, the word of Torah, the word of wisdom. They only see people being happy. And that's the same here. That happiness, that frivolity, that joyfulness, that pleasure can be used to the service of God. Right? That's really Hasidut. That's what Hasidut does. It brings the Chorma, the Yediyah, into the joy, into the level of the emotion. But the emotion are elevated to Chorma, to that level of the study. But you have, and we also read last time with Rabbi Narman Mibraslev, that this is the way to do things, really with joy, always with joy. Okay.
Okay, so should we read the others?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Frivolity and scoffing, boasting and idle talk from the element of air. So air being like silliness, idle talk. But then like just one way of flipping this around is like Rebbe Nachman says that if someone is in depression, actually the best thing to do is to be completely goofy and to just like make jokes to the point that at least someone can laugh.
Come on, we're speaking about boasting and idle talk. Come on, there is. See, if we keep on when we research thing, when it said there is a thing that said marbesh sira imisha, the one that talk too much with a woman is like is not a good thing. And Calva Romer, it said, of course, it's speaking about his wife. So Calva Romer even more with any other woman. So what does that mean? That will be that idle talk. And how does that idle talk can be turned to the kedusha? Is when it is turned that all the talk that is done is not for the matter of this world. It is done again for the study, for the sake of discovering something. It is no more the sake of just the pleasure of this world. So I'm able to elevate it. Air is really what encompasses everything, right? Air is all around us. It's at every time. So how do I'm able to connect to this? Because it's well, in the term of idol, it is always there. It's not. I don't have to do too much to be able to get to have air around. It's always there. So how do I turn it? That I elevate it. That it becomes something that is the element of that idol become always for the sake of Shamaim, for the sake of the holiness. But at every time it said, if one walk down on the street, but in his head he should review all his Talmud, he should review his study. But I'm not idle into my walking. I look like I am idle. I'm walking around, I'm going shopping, and people are going to say, oh, look, this guy is only busy in walking around, in shopping, in doing this thing. But inside, I can always dealing with a Kedusha, with a level of studying. And that's what it is, that I have always to do it at all time. But that is like the similarity with the hair that is always there. You want to get to the next one, or you want to add something?
Yeah, I really like the next one. Sloth and melancholy from the element of earth. So, just like the feeling of being like heavy and lazy and being drawn down to the earth. To switch that around, like what comes to me is like the idea of being grounded in the earth. There's also a teaching that each of these four are connected to different cities in the land of Israel. So fire is Jerusalem, where sort of like a lot of the holy service went on. Water is Tiberias, where the Sea of Galilee is, where Jesus walked on water, and where there's sort of that feeling of like peacefulness and tranquility. Air is the city of Tzafat, where the Arizal lived and taught. Air is really associated with spirituality, with like people who are from the element of air are sort of like always in this spiritual world, sort of floating above reality. Just like for me personally, it's actually hard for me to be in Tzfat. I feel like there's like too much air. Like I can't actually go up there. Like every time I go to Tzfat, something like really difficult happens to me because I feel like I need to like ground the energy. And the one I really connect with is Earth, is the city of Hebron, where the cave of the patriarchs is, which is this area of Israel, which is very connected to the earth. A lot of the political issues are around that area, the land, the feeling of being grounded in the land, agriculture, and so each of those areas, a city, a place. Do you want to add anything, Philippe?
You really explain it, but maybe in how do we do that with Earth? How do I bring indeed that level? And that's good. You commented it in a concept of Eretz Israel, of the land of Israel and their cities, and what it represents, because that's a way also that it's elevated. How can I elevate, let's say here in the melancholy, the political, the doing into that world that is really what's the word? It's down, like you said, down to earth. That's what better? That's a word. When I'm totally on the ground, then how do I elevate that particle that to such kedusha? It's how do I use it? If it is to be able to propagate the wisdom, let's say I am an orator into the Knesset, into the parliament. Instead of seeking only to be able to change things here, I use it to be able to propagate Kedusha, to propagate holiness. Such as, let's say, there is movement in Israel that are like Shas, Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, it was the head of all those religious individuals that tried to bring Kedusha, to bring holiness into something that is very modern, but is very political, that tried to bring the level of earth to a level of Kedusha, of holiness. And yeah, I think that's all particularly You want?
Okay, yeah, and Georgie's saying if we can talk about water again. So just to recap, the water on the negative level is the appetite for pleasures, and pleasures in Hebrew is also like ta'ava, like desires, or maybe ta'anugim actually, like delights. So this includes like um, wanting. I think it's probably talking about like the Rabbi Nachman says that there's three major delights. There's three major ta'avot, major desires of the human being for the desire for food, the desire for money, and the desire for sex. And so these are these three pleasures that anyone operating from the animal soul, that's pretty much what life is devoted to. And then there's sort of the level of using each of these for God, sort of in the domain of holiness to sort of that's why so much of the mitzvot are around food and meals on Shabbat. They say that the food you eat on Shabbat actually has nothing to do with the physical body. It's all going to the soul. And they say like, what you eat on Shabbat doesn't actually go to your stomach and your weight. It actually it's supposed to be like eat as much as you want, spend as much money as you want. And then for money, like giving charity is a very powerful thing for sort of keeping the money desire in check, giving 10%, having the mindset that I'm earning only so that I can give. And then for sex, having children, sort of keeping the laws of purity and immersing in the mikveh, and going into that act with the mindset of giving pleasure, and also creating life and bringing down new souls into this world. That's what that high energy is really there for. And then sort of there's also another level, like what I discussed right now is using those three desires in the realm of holiness, but then there's also the level of sort of the whole idea of desire itself that sort of, I think, not to badmouth Christianity, but I think that like some Western interpretation of Christianity and Judaism sort of created this like line between the body and the soul. So anything with the body is bad, anything with the soul is good. But it's sort of like taking this whole notion of desire that we usually associate with the body, and saying that desire and delight and all of these things really belong to the soul too. And that's like the Song of Songs, like relating to God with the whole gamut of desire and desiring for God, and realizing, and that sort of maybe if a person is drawn to all of these desires, then there's also an element where in their religious service they also need to awaken the element of desire and delight. And it shouldn't be that a person's physical life is about wanting pleasure, and then their spiritual life is about suffering or sort of like denying oneself pleasure, but that also in prayer, also in mitzvot, also in study, there too a person can sort of like open their desire for pleasure, and see everything they do as sort of being in this even like in a pleasure seeking mode, but not exactly like ego pleasure, but more like just delighting in God, and that can actually be what the soul is like hungering to do on a deeper level.
And that's connected to the second revelation, where indeed we receive pleasure, but this is the right pleasure. It's not for that, for just our own self-satisfaction. Is to elevate it, and you bring it correct, in the three level of the food, the money, and the sex. The food, you really explain it well, into the Shabbat and all the meal, and we do because we're elevating that level to a higher level, right? Let's say if I look at the thing that is the steel that does not move, the steel, the minerals are eaten by the plant, and instead they elevate to that level of plant. They give some higher level. The plant that is not really live, that does not move, is eaten by the BMI, by the level of the animal, and it's elevated to a small higher level that is now it's a being that moves but that does not think. Then man eats the animal and he elevate all those levels back to the kedusha, is able to do that purpose, and that's the same thing here. So for the food, I am elevating those particles from the steel, the plant, and the animal to the level of kedusha. Kesef, which is the Hebrew word for money, is the same as kisui, conceal, hidden. So when I am, because usually what we do with money, we use it for ourselves. It's like a clothing. We appropriate it, we save it, and we want it because it gives us all those pleasure. So when I am turning it in a different manner, I am revealing, I am, I am, I am returning that kisui, that hidden part, and I'm using it for the right purpose. And indeed, it's tzedakah, and the other one that with the sex is in comparison to tefillah, because what is sex? Is that pure enjoyment to be elevating a new soul into this world. And when I do it for the right purpose, we read also, I think, not long ago in a Tanya about the spilling of a sperm levatala for nothing, that has to be done even when one has a relationship. Is to be careful that that does not happen, because it is really bringing things like a sphirat damim, the spreading of blood into like killing. So because that's the same way, the tefillah is to elevate that life into a higher level, and the sex become the same idea. It's like I'm elevating that physical body, which is the most important one, by the way. That's sex is the biggest desire that we have, because that's what permits us to create, to be creators, to bring down a new soul into this world. And we're forming, and like we read before, between the Abba, that is the source, and the Ima, which is the receiving, we're able to bring a new being, like Adam Yada et Chava, when they said that man, Adam, the first man, knew his wife Rava, it is, they said that they had a relationship, and Yada, this is that knowledge that bring us to the level of knowledge, of pure knowledge. That's why it's so important when we can elevate it for that reason, that is not just for a pleasure of having a sexual pleasure, but indeed the pleasure of this world are not to be negated, they are to be elevated. Like my ego has not to be negated and suppressed. It has to be used to be able to be elevated. The ego, in a sense, is Ezra Kenegdo, the helper against him, because it helped me to elevate it, but it's also against me because it's always pushing me to not do the right thing. But it permits me to elevate it. There's a Hasidic story that says that really the Yetzer Hara is the one that taught Moses the secret of Ketoret, of the incense process in Yom Kippur. In a temple, there is a special, in the Holy of Holies, that the high priest does with incense. And there is a whole secret behind it. And this was taught by the Yetzer Hara, by his evil inclination, by the ego, to Moses. So there is something that is elevated, because everything is not separated, that there is a good and a bad. Everything is from one and one alone. Like you brought Christianity, of that idea that there is the Satan, there is the devil, and there is God, two entities. And we read before, when we were studying about the Rambam, the Sefer Hamada, that if we're going to think that there is two gods, two entities of God, then we created a limit to each of them. They're not no more all powerful, they are limited, they can only do what they are on their part, and therefore they're depending on time, space, and motion. And that's why we have to be able to see a lot further. But is it easy? Are we able to see it at all time? No, this is the work that we're doing here. And that's why the path is more important than the goal. But if I reach it, let's say I'm total righteous now, then I have nothing else to do. And this is, the purpose is to be able to work at all time like this. But I am able, and that's why the Tanya is all about the benoni, because that's where the work is. The Tanya is a book that it said about the Tanya that's not a book that one read alone. It's a book that one with uh, a, a teacher, with someone that's gonna guide him, because that's the purpose, is to be able to go deep into it and to be able to practice those things, to be able to live by them. Because all those stories in the Tanya were things that one used to have when you go to your rabbi. You speak with your rabbi, you have a personal relationship with him, you talk about your problem, and he's answering to you, he's reading into your soul. Like we spoke about the 5 levels of soul, your rabbi, your Rav can see the Yerida, the part of Yerida into your soul. And he meyared it atzmo, he joined, he unified himself to that Yerida to see exactly where is your correction. What is your soul sick? What is able to do? And that's why the Tanya came about. So let's say you brought the Lubavitcher Rabbi of blessed memory, but I was saying to people, if you have a problem, you can study. There was a question that a student came and asked him, what part do you like? Do you prefer usually when you study the Talmud? And he said, oh, I like that part of the Talmud, and this part I don't like so much. So he said, okay, in the part that you like, I'm going to ask you 2 questions. So okay. So he asked him 1 question and on the part of the Talmud, and the student said, oh yeah, he was able to answer. They answered very well. And the rabbi said, okay, on your answer, I'm going to ask you another question. When he has a question, and the student was, oh, this I don't know. I don't know how to answer. And the rabbi told him, there is no answer to that question. You cannot find it in the Talmud. For it, you have to find it into the Tanya. Go and study the Tanya, because the Tanya speak about something very different, a spiritual level, an elevation of the soul that is not only that I have to do. The Talmud speak about the thing that I have to do into this world. How I have to make kashrut, how I have to keep a mitzvah, how I have to put a tzitzit, how I have to put talit, how I have to pray. It's talk about all those things that are very on the doing. The Tanya speak, how do I elevate my inner? But one is not separated from the other. Like many people separate Kabbalah from Torah, from the regular. They say, oh yeah, you have to study Kabbalah only, you should not study Talmud, you should not study Mishnayot. These are the people that do not understand, because it is not separated. It is one and the same. It is the same thing, but it is 2 facets of it. It's to be able to elevate it to that level, that the spiritual has to be able to be elevated from the inner, but the outer is also an intrinsic part of it. I cannot separate both. It's like separating Torah and oral Torah. You can't. It's like separating everything. It is one in particular. Like my soul is within my body. I cannot have it outside of me when my body is working by itself. It is one and the same. And that's why I think what we're learning here with the Tanya is very a practical application. Just to study to know, it's really useless. I know that sometimes we want to be able to understand so many things, but there is no need for it. That makes me sound like a very, oh, I am so smart, I know all this stuff. But what is important is I study almanat to do, for doing. The Pirkei Avot tell me that the one that has more deed than his wisdom mitkayemet. His wisdom exists. The one that has less deed than his wisdom, that has more wisdom than his deed, his wisdom does not exist. And I think we talked about it last time too, when we were speaking about the Sefer Hamada with the Rambam. This is what is very important. And that's what we're all learning here. So far, that's what I understand. That's why we're meeting here and we're studying, to see how can I really elevate my life to the level of Kedusha. How can I elevate every little things I do? When I eat, when I wash, when I wake up, when I sleep, when I do anything in my life, how can I turn it for the right purpose? How can I do that for the right reason? And that's what we just read here. But all those places, all those 4 levels, all those 4 elements, I can look at it in the negative part, and I can look at it in a positive part. And that's what I am trying to do. I want to elevate the klipa noga, the spark within the klipa, to the level of kedusha.
Okay, yeah, awesome. I just wanted to give like as an example, like with the mitzvot, the purpose of the mitzvot is really to extract the holy sparks within everything in this world. So when we build a sukkah, for example, we are sort of demonstrating how this physical world and trees and nature and wood can be used for a mitzvah, sort of mitzvah as being seen as like the expression of God's will in this physical world. And so by bringing all of these things, foods and wines and all of the different materials that we use for each mitzvah, like most mitzvot involves some aspect of this physical world. So by doing that, we show that this physical world is really one with God. And then there's sort of the deeper level that not only are we sort of using this thing instrumentally to show that it can be used for God, but it's like seeing God in the wood itself, in nature itself. And I really think that that's the level that a lot of us are drawn to, and that's the level I think that the world is drawn to. So I kind of feel like Judaism sort of needs to catch up. It's like we're doing all these mitzvot, but really what people are hungry for is finding the divinity in these things themselves and not necessarily only instrumentally. Like, for example, the laws of combining wool and cotton as being forbidden to make clothes. That's sort of seen as a way of like clothing too can be used for God. Anytime we engage in this physical world with the mitzvot in hand, we're purifying the world. But once the world has been purified, once the world is ready, and the Rebbe said this world is completely ready for Mashiach. He said the buttons have been shined, everything is complete. So once the world is already purified, then we go to the level of really finding God in the elements of the world itself. So, do we need to build a sukkah? Sure, but we're not saying that this wood is in some fallen state, and then once we make it into a mitzvah, it's sort of being raised. We see the nature as it is, and the sukkah as an expression of God. And so, if the mitzvot are useful for us in doing that power of unifying, then great. But if people sort of connect to that level at which they're tuning into the divine nature of everything, as long as they've sort of cleansed themselves enough, and as long as the world is cleansed enough, then that is really sort of the innermost point of the mitzvot.
The doing of a mitzvah is no different than the doing of anything else. It is, let's say, if I am a carpenter, then I'm gonna have to cut the wood in a certain way to make a cupboard, which means very specific action that are no different than any other action that I do during the day. But I really have a certain vehicle for some certain thing. You brought the sukkah. The sukkah is really the level of spirituality between the zivug, the wedding between the same avaya and same anut, where the term sukkah, which is Chav A, which is for the Chav Vav, which is 26 for the Havaya, then Samer A, which is 65 for the same Anut. And he said Dar Dar. We will live within it, and that's why we elevating it. There is something into the mitzvot that are not different as a. It's like that's what I'm doing. Instead of going to work, I do a sukkah. Is not a different action. If I think that it is something that is very different, that is a different action, like most people do, then indeed I look at it as work, as something that is very, I am forced to do this so-called so I can connect to God, and it's not understanding at all what the mitzvot is about. And I know that most people, and I even heard a lot, come on, when I was studying with BB, that's the way it's understood. And that's, to me, it's a misunderstanding of what the purpose of mitzvot are.
What you're saying is correct on the level of Kabbalah, but in Hasidus, the whole purpose of mitzvot is to is a binding of Judaism and Kabbalah, where your physical observance of the mitzvot and halacha, that they were designed to harmonize the spiritual and physical reality. So everything was formulated according to that. So when we're doing mitzvahs and physical observance, they have no meaning and they have no action. Like you said, what you said was correct. But when you get to that level where you're operating at the level of Chassidus, then you're able to infuse spirituality into physicality, and that's the whole teaching about what Ayla just said about making a home for God in this world. So it's hard to get to that point, and that's the it's you can do a lot of mitzvahs, and sometimes you're just not with it. You got to be fully concentrating and putting all that intent and desire in the physical actions of it. It's very difficult to do, but that's what the teachings of Chassidut is, the bringing the spiritual world to this world by performance of the mitzvot. So that's just like that's a whole nother level than what Kabbalah teaches itself.
Well, if I could just say one thing, I just want to suggest that maybe we're talking about the same thing, but just with different vocabulary, because I think that uniting the two names of God, at least the system I'm familiar with of like the Kabbalistic intention before the mitzvot, that is for the sake of the unification of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of God, and Shechinte and Shechina, which for me is sort of a way of sort of summing up the tree of life. For the sake of the unification of God's names, for the sake of the unification of God's emanations, I think that that what Sanjaya is saying about Chassidus is actually just sort of a different way of phrasing that. It's like, because the higher emanations of God are identified with the more transcendent aspect of God, and the lower emanations with closer to this world. So when we're creating a home for God below, on the deepest level, what we're doing is really uniting God with himself, because if this whole world is an emanation of God and we're creating a home for God in this world, then we're really just uniting God back with himself. And so that really is uniting God's names. So I just wanted to put in that I think Kabbalah and Chassidut are talking about the same thing, just with different vocabulary.
Yeah, come on. That's what I was talking before. Also, we cannot separate them. And I know that we hear a lot of separation. Religion is religion, Kabbalah is Kabbalah, we're not the same. And to me, those are the people that are not teaching the right thing. Because it's also said, Kol ma'asai yilusem samaim. All my doing you for the sake of heaven. Not only the specific one, all of them. And that's what we're trying to do. Tiyuli am kiddushim. You will be for me a holy nation. You will be holy people to me, which means that I'm going to bring my holiness dwell into this world, into the klipa. Because when we spoke about the tzimtzum, when we spoke that there was that separation, that will to receive, that thought, the need of restriction, and that's why we are undoing that restriction. We're permitting, and again, yeah, of course, God is not separated from this creation, so of course he's here, but it's to bring that holiness in a permanent manner. But there will be no more the darkness, which is what we call, in a sense, that we are into the dark. Let's say, to bring up soon, in a few weeks, we're going to celebrate Purim, which is what is so great about Purim. It's like Kippurim, right? Kippur, from Kippurim, but there is a unification, a oneness of God. In Purim, we so-called ambriate ourselves, right? We dress differently. We get all drunk, and the idea is indeed that now we have a shlita, a governance over this world, over the klipa, over the ego, and that's why we are completely in a different manner. We are in a different dress, and that's really the only day that we can really get drunk for those that drink alcohol. But That's one of the particle. Come on, even and if you when you read we read the Megillat Esther, and there is a lot. Come on, where is Esther into the Torah? Because it's come a lot after, but it is found there. And
I wanted to say about Purim also that what you were saying about the Megillah is really interesting because there is this level at which sort of like the separation of this world from God becomes really irrelevant. And I think that's connected to seeing this world as an extension of God's name that we're then uniting with God. It's kind of like this world is either all God or it's all void of God, and that's the same level. So it's like in the Megillah, there's no mention of God, and that almost shows us that all of reality is God. But also, like in the Song of Songs, like this whole idea that there's this love story that seems like the most romantic love story that's ever written, and yet it's describing the highest level. And also, Rebbe Nachman's stories, for anyone who hasn't read, are just an amazing, amazing resource. And there are all these stories that are actually talking about deep Kabbalistic secrets, but they're clothed in sort of like fairy tales, and this idea that even where it's almost like not mentioning God explicitly is a way of not offending the fact that this world is God. And that's how Abraham called God's name. That was Abraham's connection to God. And we've learned that Abraham gave his connection to God to all of his descendants. We all, and that really means all human beings. There's no way someone can put the word Jew in here because Abraham is the father of all religions. So that was the realization that Abraham had. If you look in the Torah, he called God El Olam, not which means God world, not even El HaOlam, not God of the world, but God world. And so it's weird. I mean, how is that not pagan? We hear that Abraham was the first monotheist, but there was something about his realization of this oneness, of this complete entity that is God. And then that gets into like Spinoza. That was Spinoza's realization that this world in its entirety is really just this one being that is God. And then that was sort of misunderstood and used in this way that eventually developed into atheism. But sorry, I'm kind of like bringing up a lot of different things here that are just fragments of thoughts. But Rav Kook said that actually atheism was something that came to the world to cleanse God of the sort of image of an old man in the sky with a beard. So there was some deeper understanding of God that we needed to get to, that atheism was there for. And I think that it is sort of the correct understanding of Abraham's realization, which is that this world is entirely God. And there's this oneness that once we connect to that level of oneness in this world, then we truly are connecting with God. It's not saying that God is limited to this world, God forbid, but there's this sort of texture of oneness that once we're tapped into it, we're tapped into the infinity that is God.
Yes, very, very, very good, Ayala, because that's the same thing with Baal Shem Tov when he brought his concept that God is everything and is everywhere. A lot of people were not able to conceive this. It's and still it is. And why we're not able? Because we see ourselves as existing on our own. We see ourselves as something, and that's the difference between me and Ma. We have to see Ma ani. What am I? And the Ma is what? Come, I am nothing compared to the me, which is I am, and he is him, and that's what there is.
I'm really curious what other people have to say about this. It's like if we are seeing someone in the world, or if we're seeing a aspect of the world that is quote unquote atheist or agnostic, and we in our own consciousness recognize that as as being true in some way, or we sort of know how to like lift that up, quote unquote. Is it even necessary to sort of bring people to this realization, or is it really connecting to that level at which we really know that that God is this much greater thing, and why does it even matter that someone would say the word God? I mean, I guess it would just be to make sure that others are open to all of these teachings that are discussing exactly what they're talking about, and just to know that the word is not an obstacle. But I think that's a really great point. I don't know if Georgie said that so that we all talk about it now, or if she just wanted to share. But I definitely think about that a lot.
Yeah, I don't really have to go to people and lecture them on God and tell them, yeah, there is a God, that's what it is. Look, how can you not believe? I can prove it. That's not even the parasha this week. Tell us like what I was bringing before. It teaches really the way. We are a demonstration. We must live our life according to what we really believe, and because we will show over, and we can subdue that evil inclination that is in the world. Like we were speaking before, right? The whole purpose is to elevate this world, to take that spark of Kedusha and elevate it. And this is a partnership, right? Say God made us partner. We are partner into this world. Where it is said in Genesis, it said then He gave man to name all the animals, to give their name. What do you mean? Man has to give a name to all, because name acquire a possession. When I give a name to something, I defined it and acquire it as my own. And that's why in Kabbalah we say we do not name what we did not attain, which means what we name, it is something that we are experiencing that is a part of us. And so that's what we're doing here. If I want to bring someone else close to Kadosh Baruch Hu, to the Creator, is not by going and doing a lecture to them. Is by living my life according to really what I believe. And those people are going to say, wow, why this guy is doing this thing? Look at him, he's looking to this, he's doing this, he doesn't react like angry over people. That's interesting to know what is in it. And those are the people, we draw them to it. We don't have really to, like sometimes I don't like the term, we disseminate to other. We try to force feed the world that there is that concept. I have to do my part. The world is coming to it. That's why there's more and more questions everywhere. But people are seeking it. And when they're seeking it, then they turn to the people that really can deliver it, that live in a way that can deliver it. And everyone has a different way of getting into that path. And I think there was I think, Ayala, you posted it. When you posted, when I argued a little about it. But there is all the path. We can always go to the same. We can reach it to that same level. It's not important if we Buddhist, if we Christian, or if we anything. But the path is where we get. But we have to be able to come to the same realization that it is that dwelling of God into this world, the Shekhinah, that the Vekut with Him, that total love. It's like that's why I love the Baal Shem Tov. Because his purpose was to show awe and love of God and the love of your fellow man. But if I can reach that, this is what I should seek. Even before I deal with God, even before I deal with, I need to be able to be close to God, I have to be close to the fellow man. This is the first part, an act of kindness. We learn from Abraham, right? When Abraham was in front of his tent, after the circumcision, and he was talking with a Shekhinah, with God, he saw three strangers coming to him, and he said to God, God, you wait. I have things to do now. These people coming to my tent, I have to take care of them. I cannot say, I am into God, I don't have time to take care of my friend. This is the opposite. This is not doing God. For the love of others, for the love of other people, we come to the love of God, and not the opposite. And that's why I think instead of trying to preach over if someone is an atheist, no, how can you not believe in God? Well, you don't see. I don't have to. I have to show him my love. And this will bring him by his own self to come and see it. And I think that's the beauty. That's why when we say Israel is the light to the nation, in the most simplistic way, is indeed to those that do not have a connection to that God, to that Creator. We are like a light. We show them into the darkness. We like a flashlight into the road where they can see where they're going, where their path is. To the inner level is all those things that are so-called for my physicality, that life, like we said before, the pleasure that I want here. I am the light to it to be able to bring it, like with a thread, to bring it for the right purpose, for the right thing. So it is always, the work is inner and outer. It is always into all in that two dimension. I cannot say that, I only have to work into the inner, because that does not work either. I can sit in a cave all the days of my life and pray and pray and pray. If I do not do nothing into this world, I did not create a place for God to dwell. And if I only use this world and only enjoy it for my own self-pleasure, I am only perpetuating the klipa and not feeding into the kedusha. So I have to unify both of them. I have to create the whole thing. I cannot do one part without the other. And that's why when we're speaking about the mitzvot, I cannot just do the mitzvah by itself without having the intention. It said, it's like a mitzvah lelo kavana, without the kavana. It's like a body without a soul. My soul without my body cannot do nothing in this world. My body without my soul is dead. Does not have a possibility. But the union of both of them permit all the possibilities to do everything that I can do.
It looks like people need to go, but maybe I'll just read this quote that Jack put up, which is so beautiful, by Rabbi Nachman. Beware when you talk to an atheist and listen very carefully to every word. Listen very carefully to every word he says, because as he believes in nothing and you come from nothing, open your ears.
Meaning that you will learn something.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Rabbi Nachman, they say he actually, like, historians say that he would go and play chess with the people who were, quote unquote, part of the Enlightenment. But and some of them will say, well, he went to go and make them religious, but really, sort of on a deeper level, he had a lot of he was a very, very large soul and had a lot of questions himself. And I actually think that's the best way of putting it, that he knew that there was something to learn.